Well, good morning. It is really a privilege to be with you today. Thank you for joining this session. I'm Adam Sachs, the President of Tourism Economics, and I'm just glad to be able to share with you some thoughts today, especially because everything that I'm going to share with you is around the concept of planning for the recovery. And in some ways, Wisconsin's already experiencing the beginnings of recovery, and you've certainly fared better than many other parts of the country. But we still have a long way to go. And so my goal in our time together is to give you a sense of where I think we're headed, what some of the reasons are behind our outlook for the future of travel, and some of the implications of that for Wisconsin and for your decisions in terms of marketing, strategy, capacity, and even advocacy as well. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share with you some slides, and these will be a bit of a tour guide for us as we go through the content. So let's go ahead. We're going to get to work here together, and we will have time for questions, and I'll do my best to provide answers at the end. So let's go ahead and get started together. Now, one of the things we've been doing over the last year with the U.S. Travel Association is tracking monthly travel spending for each of the 50 states. And looking at Wisconsin compared to the U.S., there are a number of things that stand out to me. One is it's been a terrible year. You're in good company in experiencing that, but particularly in the spring of last year, you can see travel spending was down 80% in April of last year. But we saw market improvement through the summer, but still down about 40% for most of the summer. And then but one of the things I see is that in March, things have begun to improve, and it looks like things continuing to do so in April. Yet the difference between Wisconsin and the U.S. is instructive as well, because I see Wisconsin outperforming the U.S., especially over the last few months. And what's been happening over these recent months, I think is very instructive, particularly about where I think we're headed. If you go back to, let's say, the beginning of December on this chart, or the middle of November, you can see only 39 to 40% of travelers said they felt safe traveling outside their community. Now that has risen to 60% over just about a 4-month period of time. It's a pretty remarkable increase given that short period of time. Now we still have a ways to go as well. So still there are 40% of travelers in the U.S. who say they don't feel safe traveling outside their community right now. So what does that tell us about where we're headed? Well, one of the metrics that I think is really important as we think about the future travel and the risks over the next 6 months is what's happening with vaccination. I'm particularly encouraged that nearly 83% of those aged 65 and up in the U.S. have received at least one shot of the vaccine. 56% of all adults have received at least one dose of the vaccine. This is really, really important. It's really important because, especially, why am I boxing this 82.8% number? Well, it's because if you look at deaths from COVID-19 over the last year, well, 81% of them have been among those aged 65 and up. And so it did a bit of the math on this. And if you say, okay, 55 of all adults have received the vaccine and 82% of those aged 65, it works out to a reduction in deaths based on the vaccinations alone of 75%. And so what we're seeing right now is the direct product of those vaccinations as deaths and hospitalizations continue to fall around the U.S. And that is why we are taking a very strongly held view that this summer is being staged for a strong rebound in leisure travel around the country. And destinations in Wisconsin are particularly well positioned because those destinations that are going to continue to struggle are urban destinations. And so think about the travelers as ready to travel, and I'm going to share with you some reasons why I'm quite confident they are ready to travel, but they're likely to travel to a reduced set of destinations. And Wisconsin will be among those destinations that will be favored, given that you offer largely a lot of outdoor activities and you have access to a number of significant drive markets as well. So I think the reasonable question to ask as we look forward to the summer, when things are hopefully going to be even more normal from a health perspective, is the economy going to be in a place that's going to be able to support a travel recovery? And there are a number of metrics that I think are really, really valuable in answering this question. Most foundationally, the jobs market and the number of jobs either being lost or added. Now, we lost 22 million jobs in February, March, and April of last year. But look what's happened since then. Just a remarkable continued climb out of that hole. And we're going to get April data at the end of this week, and it's going to show continued jobs gains. We've regained well more than half of the jobs lost right now. So that's very encouraging indeed. Certainly has all the makings of what you would call a bit of a V-shaped recovery. Where we stand right now in terms of unemployment is 6%. And if you compare that to the average of the last 7 recessions, it's below that. The average of the last 7 recessions since 1960 is an unemployment rate of 8%. Now, you may look at that and say, well, that's quite good. And indeed it is. But I would give you a little bit of a caution on this. And the reason is that the real unemployment rate is closer to 9%. Why do I call it the real unemployment rate? It's because the labor force participation rate has fallen to the lowest that it's been since the 1970s. People have left the labor force over the last year. They've done it for a number of reasons: childcare reasons, health concerns, and certainly unavailability of work in certain sectors. But I think that 9% or 8.9 as it stands now is a more accurate reflection of the unemployment rate right now. Nevertheless, my really considered view on this is that the economy is in a great place to support a travel recovery, even with this state of the job market right now. Let me share with you a few reasons. The first is low interest rates. Now, right now, just look at mortgage rates. Now, they've come up, but they're still at historically low levels. What's happened over the last year as a result of these lower interest rates is continuing to be a wind in the sails of the U.S. economy. Why? Well, households across the U.S. have refinanced their loans to lower rates, freeing up disposable income for things like travel. Lower interest rates have fueled an incredible bounce in the housing market, which of course has knock-on benefits to the construction industry around the country. Lower interest rates, they're still near zero as set by the Fed. Well, that's reducing the cost of capital to businesses, fueling investment, as well as lowering the cost of capital and debt that's currently being held by both households and companies. So low interest rates, absolutely one of the reasons that we see the U.S. economy in a good position to continue to grow. The second reason is the sheer scale of fiscal stimulus that has been passed over the last year. Every bill that's been passed over the last year is represented by an additional step there in the red, topped off by that $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan passed a couple of months ago. Now, that equates to 25% of GDP that's been passed in fiscal stimulus. And if you want to try to find a time in recent history where anything close to that has been passed as fiscal stimulus, you have to go back to the great financial crisis of 2008. And what happened? Well, that topped out, all those blue steps, at just 12% of GDP. And so we're looking at double of that's been passed as fiscal stimulus. And this is absolutely a catalyst of economic activity through the form of PPP loans that have been forgiven, through stimulus checks, through other spending bills. All of this continue to drive the U.S. economy forward. Now, it raises the question, are we going to see inflation? And I think the answer is yes, we are going to see inflation. We expect to see inflation rise to in the range of 3% before the year is up. How concerned should we be? We don't think very, because what is likely to happen is that this stimulus is going to flow through the economy. It's going to generate a significant boost in growth. Prices will indeed rise, but then they will fall. And that is typically how this has worked, as strong stimulus has flowed through the U.S. economy. So yes, inflation is going to rise. There are going to be people that do, on one level or another, lose their minds and are going to be very, very concerned. But I think our view is that it's going to be a transient form of inflation and therefore not affect the economic outlook in any considerable way. But the upside of all this is that Oxford Economics, our parent company, is forecasting 8 million new jobs before all is said and done in 2021. And if you want any historic comparable on that, you won't find one. If our forecast holds, the strongest job creation in terms of the number of new jobs ever that we'll experience in 2021. And so this implies our economic forecast for the U.S. is going to get us above the pre-virus GDP path before the end of the year. And this combination of improving health environment and fiscal stimulus lead us to this scenario of a summer mini boom in economic activity. We expect U.S. GDP growth to register in the range of 7% for 2021, a truly remarkable level of growth. One of the things you'll note on this slide, if you're looking carefully at it, is that we've revised our GDP forecast upwards. So if you look at the dotted line, that's what we were forecasting in December. And then the solid line is what we're currently forecasting. Why such a fairly sizable upward revision? Well, there are two reasons between December and April. The first is that back in December, the beginning of December, when we did that forecast, we didn't have near the clarity on the availability or the effectiveness of vaccines. And so there was not nearly that upside baked into the forecast. But our really best case scenario is taking place right now with the rollout of vaccines, with their effectiveness, and how they are affecting the health crisis. The second thing that has affected this upward revision is the passage of the American Rescue Act. And that $1.9 trillion is not trivial, and it does flow through and drive economic growth in the outlook. So I hope that answers the question, will the economy support an uptick in travel? I think the answer is a strong yes. So let me then turn to this question, when will travel recover? All right, so if you take the things that I've said so far as, all right, we can maybe buy that. What does that mean for travel? Let me give you some thoughts on this. First of all, it's not really a fair question because the travel industry has a lot of different parts. And if you look at the data even from March, you can see how wide the differences are in performance. So auto trips in March down 14% nationally. Well, air passenger travel down nearly 50%. So clearly two different types of transportation performing very, very differently. International travel to the U.S. will down 87%. And likely to be in that range for the remainder of the year. Hotel room demand in April down just 19%. But look at another form of accommodation, short-term rental. So this is the Airbnb and VRBO, up relative to 2019, 1%. So to answer the question, when will travel recover? Well, it depends on who you ask, right? If you're asking someone who's in the short-term lodging industry, they'd say yesterday. That's when it will recover. If you talk to someone who owns a resort hotel, they may say this summer. But if you ask somebody who owns a convention hotel, they may say 2022, I hope, right? And if you ask an airline, they may say 2023, right? But if you ask a destination depending on auto trips, again, they may say this summer. So I'm going to try to address some of these segments, but I first wanted to frame this for you and recognize that the travel industry is going to have winners and it's going to have losers over the coming year. But overall, there is a rising tide for travel. And that rising tide is in some ways being generated by savings. U.S. households have saved $1.9 trillion over the last year. That's important. It is money that is lying in wait to travel and to be spent on travel as things open up. And it's being saved primarily by higher income households. In fact, it's being saved entirely by households making in the top 40 percentile of income earners. Well, this is important because the unemployment rate among those with a college degree is only 3.8%. Now, if you only have a high school diploma in the U.S., the unemployment rate is 7.2%. Well, this is important because our most frequent and our most lucrative travelers are higher income earners with higher education. As a point of reference, those earning $100,000 or more in the U.S., well, they only represent 24% of households, but they represent 59% of leisure travel spending. And so the fact is that the travelers that we rely on the most have, A, been relatively unaffected by job cuts, and B, have been saving significant amounts of money. And that savings is going to be availed to the travel industry as things continue to open in the coming months. But people are traveling differently, and they will continue to travel differently over the summer. This is the latest data from Longwoods and Miles, and I think it tells us a lot about how things have shifted. And we can think about the next 6 months through the summer as this really being an important way to define shifts in traveler activity. 31% of travelers say, I'm going to drive instead of fly. And so it's going to affect where they choose to go, right? If they're driving instead of flying, 31%. 29% say, I'm going to travel domestically in the U.S. instead of traveling internationally. 26%, I'm going to reduce the number of trips that I'm taking. 16%, I'm going to choose rural over city destinations. Just 11% say I'm not going to travel at all. But on the other side, 26% say COVID-19 is not influencing my travel plans at all. I think about these people as the brave among us. Well, all of this has implications for Wisconsin, right? And most of it positive. So the ability to draw and drive travelers, 31%. The ability to convert would-be international outbound travelers to domestic, a positive for Wisconsin. Certainly, choosing rural over city destinations, a positive for Wisconsin. But let me just drill down on this 29% for a minute. 29% of travelers saying, I'm going to travel in the U.S. instead of international. They're switching plans from traveling internationally. This is a major opportunity. And the reason is there were more outbound travelers than inbound travelers in 2019. So if you think about this as an exchange, we're not going to be receiving international inbound travelers, but we're also not going to be sending out U.S. residents and outbound travelers, and those U.S. travelers are instead going to travel domestically. Well, that leaves a net opportunity of 19 million more trips for the U.S. And so that is particularly an opportunity for Wisconsin. As you think about attracting U.S. residents to travel domestically, see some of the amazing attractions across your state, and take advantage of the opportunity of these travelers that are going to be looking domestically instead of internationally. And our forecast that we recently completed with the U.S. Travel Association bears out this strategic imperative, because the domestic market, in terms of the volume of trips, we expect it to get virtually back to where it was next year. But look how long it's going to take for international to get back. We don't expect it to get back until maybe 2024, get to about 96% of 2019 levels. Why is it going to take so long? I think there are a few reasons. One is that COVID-19 is continuing to be a much more severe crisis in other parts of the world than it is in the U.S. Other parts of the world far, far behind in terms of vaccinations as well. Second reason is that traveler confidence can take longer to repair on international trips. And the third reason is that air service is going to take a while to come back, even once demand comes back. And so our eyes turn to the domestic market in the near term, and that is a significant opportunity indeed. Now, Business travel. Business travel is intriguing as a topic because there have been a lot of hot takes on business travel over the last year. You may have heard some of them. One famous thought leader saying he didn't think that business travel would ever recover beyond 50% of prior levels. Yet here we are with March data, already 41% of businesses saying they're going to resume travel in the next 1 to 3 months. And look how fast it has come back since January, when only 10% said that they would resume business travel in the next 1 to 3 months. This data from Global Business Travel Association. And so even now, businesses are beginning to make plans to get back in the game, and I expect this number to continue to rise as business travel is an essential part of operations, of productivity, and of competitiveness. And the same would be true of the group and conventions market. We're seeing kind of demand for that. Now, it's going to take a while, right? I don't want this to be me implying that business travel is going to come roaring back. In fact, our latest forecast doesn't have business travel coming back for several years, but it will come back. And in fact, if you take a look at just traveler sentiment in general, 2/3 of travelers, according to destination analysts, are ready to travel right now. Right? So the appetite for travel is very, very strong among travelers, and it seems like the risk aversion to travel is very much subsiding across the traveler market. And in fact, if you wanted to say, well, how about plans? Who's making plans? Well, here's the answer. According to Longwood and Miles, 86% of travelers have, right now, traveler plans over the next 6 months. Now go back 4 or 5 months. Look at the middle of December, that 12/16 mark here. Only 57% of travelers said they had traveler plans over the next 6 months. Now stands at 86%. This is exhibit A on how quickly traveler sentiment can begin to rebuild, and rebuild quite fast. And so here we are now, 86%. Now you may say, well, maybe those trips aren't planned until the end of the summer, and can we really be assured that the leisure travel market's going to be back? Well, look at when those plans are in place. So 18% are within the next month, 23% are within the next 2 months, and then 25% within the next 5 months, and then another 17% beyond that. So the travel distribution is fairly even. These are not travelers that are saying, well, I'm going to plan 4 or 5 months out and hope it's okay. This is a fairly even distribution. People are planning for the near term as well as the medium term and for the summer and beyond. And so it's really positive to see that the economics as well as the realities of pent-up demand beginning to take shape in the data. And here's our latest forecast for business and leisure, showing leisure travel volume of trips fully recovered next year, 90% of prior levels this year. Business travel, again, taking longer, just about recovering in 2024. But we think the business travel is going to see its day again, and that the competitive requirements of business travel, the benefits of face-to-face will prevail, and business travel will find its way back to its former glory in time. I get asked a lot about meetings, and here we are. I'm presenting to you virtually. It's not ideal, right? But we've managed to make do. And so the question is, well, this is certainly more efficient, isn't it? And why wouldn't we keep doing it this way? Well, the reason is this. And let me just as context let you know, I have done over 200 of these over the past year, right? So I'm very familiar with this sort of environment. But the reason that I think that it's worked at all is because you, as a group, are part of a community. Many of you have spent time together, face-to-face, in one room over the years in an extensive way. And so there's relationship, there's community. And that is the gravity that has made virtual meetings work. Think about it this way. Virtual meetings are built on a foundation of in-person relationships. Without that foundation, they don't work. And what that means is that virtual meetings are unsustainable as a replacement to in-person meetings. And so we will eventually get back to in-person meetings, and the appetite for them will be voracious because we have missed being together, and we can't have it happen soon enough. So that raises the question, if well, I'm saying that meetings are going to come back, business travel is going to come back. Is there going to be an enduring legacy of this crisis? Because a lot of people are moving toward this question of, will there be a new normal? Is there some way that things are going to be different indefinitely? And I've thought a lot about this over the last year. And I do think that there will be an enduring legacy of this crisis. But I don't believe that it'll be a reluctance to travel. The enduring legacy of this crisis is actually going to be gratitude for travel. We've had something taken away from us over this past year to some degree or another that we had taken for granted. This privilege of traveling, of being together, of going to places we love, seeing people that we love. And on the other side of this, when travel's fully restored, won't we appreciate it more than we ever did before? And that is what I am sure will be the enduring legacy of this crisis. Think when we're all meeting together, how will we feel about it in a way that is different than what we felt in 2019? And indeed, I think that's going to stay with us for quite a while. So let me leave you with a call to action, and I'm happy to take time to answer any questions you may have. The call to action is a call to continue to advocate for our industry, to continue to ensure that policymakers understand the importance of our industry and what we do. The reality is that in Wisconsin, no industry has been hit as hard as travel. 20% of all jobs in leisure and hospitality remain lost in Wisconsin as of March 2021. And no other industry has been hit nearly as hard. Right? Mining, just 8%. Information, just about 4%. Construction, down about 4%. And so if there's any industry that needs additional support, it would indeed be the travel industry, which is centered there in leisure and hospitality. Now, let me put another lens on this, which is that if you look at all jobs that have been lost in Wisconsin over the last year, 38% of them have been in leisure and hospitality. Now, this is really important. It leads us to the inevitable conclusion that the only way that the Wisconsin economy gets fully back on its feet is by the travel industry getting fully back on its feet. The road to economic recovery is travel, because only by restoring travel can we restore 38% of the jobs that have been lost. The concentration of economic losses has been within the travel industry. And so the implications for everything from safe reopening and protocol to support to small businesses to ensuring that destination marketing is vital and well-funded, all of these things are the tools at our disposal for ensuring full recovery of the Wisconsin travel industry. And it's absolutely vital for full recovery of the Wisconsin economy. And I'm encouraged to see, when I look at website data across 300 destination marketing organizations in the U.S., that we're seeing destination marketing organizations, this would be state travel offices, it would be CVBs across the U.S., that look what's happened in 2021. I mean, this is a phenomenal rebound in activity. Travelers are going to DMO websites at the same level they were in 2019. So that becomes really the amplification of the message, the inspiration for travel on DMO platforms that is driving this recovery. And so it becomes paramount that DMOs continue to lead in helping to drive the recovery, because this is where travelers are going. As they begin to make these plans that we see are in place over the next 6 months, they're indeed making them, and they're using the content from destination marketers. And this reminds me of something that I experienced shortly before the first lockdown last year, I traveled to a destination marketing organization in the U.S. for their annual meeting, and I flew in and was taking an Uber to the meeting, and struck up a conversation with my Uber driver, and he asked me where I was headed, and I told him I was giving a talk at this event, and he said, "Oh, what do they do? What does this visit organization do?" And in about 30 seconds, I explained to him what destination marketing organizations do, and I explained to him the role that this organization played in selling the destination to meeting planners, as well as promoting the destination and all of its attractions to travelers around the country and around the world. And I thought I did a passable job at explaining what a DMO does. And my Uber driver got really quiet, and he said, "Hey, would you do me a favor? Could you, if you get a chance, could you tell them thank you?" I said, "Sure, be glad to." He's like, "No, really, like, I didn't have a job for 2 years. I then began to drive as an Uber driver, and it's been the first time I've been able to provide for my family in years. And it sounds like what this group is doing is why I have that job. So would you tell them thank you?" I said, "Yes." And I think that there are thousands and thousands of people across Wisconsin, if they knew what you did, and if they had the opportunity, they would also want to say the same, thank you. And I'm sure that we'll all be all the more grateful for travel as it continues to recover in the coming year. So may I say thank you to you for having me with you for this past 30 minutes or so. And I'm glad to spend time answering any questions you may have. And I'll go ahead and take a look if any questions have come in. And happy to spend time together doing that. I don't see any questions yet.
So Adam, we have one question.
All right.
Can you hear me? Is there data on how far in advance these leisure travelers are choosing their destinations?
That's a great question. We're seeing the booking window across all trips. It's been really, really short. It was sort of within the month booking window, but it's been elongating. And so if you look that one chart I showed you that looked at the distribution of trips over the next 6 months, those trips that are planned, you can see that a decent share of them were within that 1 to 2 months, but it also extended out. So summer travel plans, a lot of them have been made. There are a lot more trips that we believe are going to be booked over the next few months. That's going to cover us through the summer and into the fall as well. But the booking window, the short answer is that while the booking window has shortened a lot, it's starting to lengthen, and people are beginning to get confidence that things are going to be open and things are going to be okay. A lot of travelers, of course, have already been vaccinated, so that gives an extra level of confidence as well for planning.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. Can you talk a bit about how cultural tourism fits into this? The arts industry has been hit incredibly hard by this pandemic.
Yeah. I was really encouraged to see announced, if you think about it just as a bit of a harbinger, that Broadway has announced they're going to open up in September. And so I'm encouraged by that. We're seeing museums, of course, across the country open up at limited capacity, but those capacity constraints are being gradually lifted across the country as well. There's an incredible appetite for live entertainment as well. We work with clients in the live entertainment industry, and they're really encouraged at some of the data they're seeing as far as eagerness to participate. So one of the biggest challenges I think facing the arts and the cultural industry is, simply the sustainability of a year basically without any income for many in that sector of the economy. And so, there are venues, there are, concerns that, will they even be able to reopen? And I think that's perhaps the, where we're going to see slowness in recovery, is that there are going to be some venues, some artists that weren't able to sustain operations through this crisis. And it's where I'm hopeful that that public sector support will enable these attractions, which really are, in some ways, they're the lifeblood of our destinations, because it's what differentiates a destination. And people, by and large, they don't travel to a place for a particular hotel. It's for the attractions, the activities, the culture. And so indeed, these are absolutely vital to the recovery. And as an artist myself, near and dear to my heart, and truly, going to be an important part of the recovery.
Okay, we have another question. You have estimated an additional 8 million new jobs that will be added. Perhaps I missed it on an earlier slide, but how many jobs were lost during the pandemic?
Yeah, 22 million jobs were lost, right? But we've already regained about 12 million of those, right? So kind of doing the math there, that gets us close to full recovery. Not quite, right? Still a couple of million jobs shy of full recovery by the end of the year.
Okay, I think that is it for questions. Thank you so much, Adam, for great data, great insights, and a presentation that will help us on our road to recovery. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. I hope you all have a great rest of your event, and look forward to seeing you soon.